Do us a quick favor, guys. Hit the follow, subscribe button. Share this with someone who would benefit from it. And help us grow, as the more we grow, the better the episodes will get. Thanks, guys, for helping us. And let's get into the episode.
And he's here. He is here. Cristiano has entered the building. Welcome, wherever you are, to the Old Trafford Theatre.
Yes, guys, welcome back to this episode of SCULPTED podcast. I am going through today why sacrifice is so important. Now, when I talk about sacrifice, I'm talking about all things sacrifice. Now, there's a few reasons why particularly I really like sacrifice. And I think that there's so much power in giving up something that you like to do. And sometimes literally just for the sake of it. Now, what I mean by that, if you don't like playing if you really, really enjoy playing video games, but you know that it's not good for you, then, okay, that's quite an easy thing to sacrifice in terms of weighing up the reward that you get from it and the time you invest. Obviously, that's got to be one of the lowest ROI tasks. Therefore, sacrificing it is pretty obvious. And I would say pretty easy just by getting rid of it. Like it's something that you can literally just chuck out or sell. So that's a relatively easy thing to sacrifice. Now, immediately, the power that you get from sacrificing something is great because you're doing something you don't want to do. Now, immediately the ROI is multiplied, right? It's if you've been wasting 2 hours plus a day per week, essentially every day you're wasting 2 hours on video games. You've then earned 2 hours a day over a week. That's 14 hours. Ridiculous. Okay, that's pretty much another day that you earn back because you only have around 14 hours to 16 hours a day, so that you're actually awake for. So you've essentially earned a day back. If just 2 hours a day, you were then sacrificing that. Okay, now it's not just getting your time back. It's also knowing that you're doing something that you don't want to do. Doing something difficult. Now, I'm going to make another episode on why you should start doing the hard things in the morning, but this is a similar philosophy to sacrifice. Now, going into a more random example of sacrifice, you can start talking about sacrificing random things for the sake of getting 0.0% better or 0.0% effect on X, Y, or Z task. Literally sacrificing things for the sake of doing it. Now, I'll have to expand some more on this because you might think, what's the point? And honestly, there is no major point other than a bit of an ego boost. Now, that's an important thing. What I mean by what an ego boost is, it's actually just alignment with, for example, who I am or who you want to be. Let's say if you want to be an extremely dedicated person, you have to start sacrificing things. Therefore, you've got to start sacrificing random things just for the sake of it almost. And now I'm not meaning, okay, you sacrifice training. I mean, you sacrifice things with purpose, okay? When I say random things, it's okay, I'm sacrificing my phone before bed, 20 minutes. Something that you might think is so unnecessary, but actually has, let's say, more meaning and direction towards it. And doing that literally just for the sake of doing it, even if it doesn't give you much of a reward, just knowing that you're sacrificing things in the greater good for where you want to go will only reiterate, not hinder you, because you're not getting anything in return for the things that you're really sacrificing here, right? If you're going on your social media before bed, you might just get a bit better sleep. Maybe when you go on it, you get like 5 minutes worse sleep, okay? It's only 5 minutes. Sure, it's not too big of a difference, but just because you were doing these small things for the sake of getting better, you're then realigning yourself and essentially you're just you're confirming this is who you are, and you're confirming and bear in mind, assuming that this is what you want to do. You want to be dedicated. I think most people do. You're reaffirming this dedication through action. And because it's so easy to do, there shouldn't be much friction when you do this. So it shouldn't be a difficult thing, sacrificing, for example, your phone before you go to bed, or sacrificing something so small where you won't see much of a return and you won't see much of a difference, but you're doing it because you want to affirm your beliefs that sacrifice is important to dedication. Now, when we talk about sacrifice, there is sacrifice on a massive level, which is a long-term investment, or sacrifice on an immediate level, which is essentially you just want to force action. Now, action is so important here. So many people love to talk. They love to talk about all the things that they're smart on. And this is actually a psychological fact that humans in general are better at giving advice than following their own. Now, you could say that about me, but what I will try and do is I will try and back up everything that I say with actions. Now, if I say, out of the 100 things that I say, I might do 99 of them, I still don't do one. I still don't do one of them. And the reason for that is because humans, we are able to identify, but because we are imperfect, we can say things that could be taken as perfect, right? If I was to say, 100 times out of 100 times, you should be hitting that ball to your center back. But because we're humans, it might be 95. That's just how we are, okay? So with that same logic, you are able to give better advice than you are to follow. So, and also the other factor is disassociation. So typically humans, we can't be self-aware enough to actually reflect on our own situation and identify the patterns of which we see in our own lives, of which we could then use our own advice of which we've given to others for our own benefit. Now, I do believe that the advice that I give to others, I use for myself first and don't actually I don't do it the reverse. I make sure that I know it works for me, or I've seen it work for others, or I can do it myself and then do it and give it to the others, because that's just how I think it's better, okay? I won't tell you to do something that I haven't done myself. That's just a general rule that I will say, that I will keep true to. So, big sacrifices. I think that I am pretty informed and verified to speak on this subject because I moved to Germany at the age of 15. I have been living out of my house for the past 4 years. Okay, these things are massive sacrifices. Huge. You don't just give up, half of your, not half of my life, but, a large chunk of my adolescent life away just for fun. You don't do that, especially when I have such a good family. When I have such a good family, it actually makes it harder to sacrifice that because I'm so privileged to have such a good family. So if I was to have a less good family, essentially, family that was, maybe abusive to me, who was rude to me, who I didn't necessarily like, then sacrificing that would be very easy. But my family is not that. My family love me, they take care of me, they're here for me. I've got all of these great things about my family that makes it actually difficult for me to sacrifice that. And that's a big sacrifice. I'm not just sacrificing that time, I'm sacrificing the quality of life. That's big. So when I move away and I live by myself, I give up comfort. I sacrifice comfort. I don't know where I'm going to sleep that next night. I don't know how I'm going to afford the next meal. That sacrifice is massive because the thing about that is that I'm so blessed and privileged to even sacrifice that. First of all, I'm blessed and privileged to actually have that family. And second of all, I'm even blessed and privileged to say, you know what? I'm not even going to take that. Do you know how blessed and privileged you have to be in a situation where you can do that? That's ridiculous. I can't say no one. Not many people truly realize how blessed and privileged you are. Not many people realize how privileged you are. And I truly believe that I'm extremely privileged to even, let's just say, have a family around me, let alone have a good family. And then on top of that, I'm deciding to leave them. Okay? There are billions, and I'm not kidding, billions with a B, so the wrong way around. billions of kids in the world who would want my situation in the family that I live in. If we look at India and China combined, add South America, add all these, even in some Middle Eastern countries, add all of these less privileged kids, there's billions. There's probably 2 billion kids out there in the world who would love the position of which I am in right now, with a married family, in a good household, and there's not divorce, okay? Statistically, and I'm not holding anything against the people who have divorce, but statistically, a family succeeds more when it's a 2-family household. So I'm extremely privileged to even have 2 parents. So all of these things, kids would die for. Like, I'm so privileged to have all of these things, and I chose to sacrifice that again. So the sacrifice is massive. Now, is the sacrifice worth it? Okay, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it yet, because I'm giving up so much that so many other people don't have the privilege of. Will it ever be worth it? I don't know, but you know what? I'm going to have to make sure it is, because I am so privileged. That's big on my shoulders now. I'm going to have to carry those billions of kids that I've taken that away from. Imagine if they had my family. I've taken that privilege away from them. They could have had my life, but now I've got the world resting on my shoulders. I better make it work. I better make sure that the sacrifice that I gave is truly worth it. Now that's big, but you know what? That excites me, because if anyone was to do it, it'd be me. Honestly, if I was to bet my money on 1 billion kids making it work for the sacrifice they've given, I'd bet on myself to make it work. Right? That's a big sacrifice. So we're talking long-term sacrifice, and it's heavy. It's heavy. Not easy to take. Not easy. Firstly, we talked about the long-term sacrifice. I also mentioned if it's even worth it. Now, for the average person, I will straight up say no, it's not. The sacrifice that I have made for the average person is nowhere near worth it. I understand why 99% of people won't make the sacrifice that I make in my situation, because they don't back themselves to make it work. They don't back themselves. Okay? They also may never realize how privileged they are. So all of these things, 99% won't do it. Now, if we're talking 99% out of that billion, okay, well, you've still got 1% who might make it work or believe they can. From that 1%, who's actually going to do it? Again, I don't know, but I'm backing myself with everything inside of me to do it and be that guy. Be that 0.001% of people from that billion who are actually going to do it. That's me, I reckon. Because I feel like I do the work. Now, of course, it's arguable if it's necessary to do all of the work. You know, typically you would think that, you know, people who work the hardest are at the top, right? The cream of the crop. You know, the cream rises eventually, you would like to imagine. Now, life's more complicated than that. But you would like to think, or at least you'd like to know, that the people who do give the most at least get a fair chunk back, you know? Now, as I mentioned, that's not always going to be the case. Life is crazy, and you can't actually, there's no science to it. But I would rather bet my top dollar on the person who's doing everything they can rather than the guy who's doing 50%, all right? That's just, I think, statistically, when we're talking about that, I'd like to bet my money with the guy who's doing all the work. So that's how I see it. And I think you should too, because that's a pretty logical way of thinking. Now, long-term sacrifice, short-term sacrifice. What's that short-term sacrifice? Now, I already mentioned it about the short-term little things, you know, whether it's the phone, whether it's the, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. Doing it for the sake of doing it because it's helping you get a little bit better. But truly, you're doing it because it's helping you stay in alignment with who you are and who you want to be. Now, the main purpose for that, as I mentioned, is to align yourself with who you want to be. Now, if you don't want to be extremely dedicated or sacrificial, I don't know how you could substitute that word, but someone who is extremely dedicated to their craft, then maybe these sacrifices aren't worth it for you. But I would question if you want to become the best then. And when I talk about becoming the best, I'm talking about anything. Like, I'm talking about just becoming the best father, but becoming the best, person that you can be. To a degree, you have to sacrifice. And I honestly think if you aren't trying to become the best person that you can become, let alone in whatever endeavor you want, I honestly think that you are, this is where I have to walk the line here, because it's like a bit of a touchy one, right? I can't necessarily go into it too much, but I honestly think that you are probably doing a disservice to God. I actually think that those type of people who don't wake up every single day thinking that, I need to make today good. If you don't think like that, I honestly think that you're doing a disservice to God, because, again, it goes back to privilege. You're so privileged to even wake up. Do you know what the odds are of you even living? You probably don't, because you're so privileged. There's kids in the world who are legitimately not even choosing to wake up and not know where their next meal is. Maybe they're not even waking up. Maybe they're going through the wars right now. Maybe they're literally in trenches trying to survive. And here you are, not even thinking about what you're going to do today because you want to just take it easy, because you want to relax. You want to rest. You don't want to conquer the world. Okay, now when I say conquer the world, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not actually literally saying, you're going to be Stalin. But you don't want to become the best, even if it's just a good human being. You don't want that. I honestly think you're doing a disservice to the world and God. I do think that, because, again, it comes down to privilege. You're so privileged to even walk. You take everything for granted. Everything. If I was to take your legs away from you tomorrow, the only thing that you would ever want is to have those legs back. Now, of course, there'll be a level of homeostasis to where you become normal to it and you become your new norm. But you will always have that, and you will start to realize how privileged you were prior to having no legs. So what I would say is put it into perspective. You've got to start working. You've got to start taking action on these small things, because when things start getting taken away from you, all you want is that thing back. Okay? All you want. You're privileged, extremely privileged. Don't take it for granted. And you have to start sacrificing things, because if you don't start sacrificing things and you don't train yourself to be okay with sacrifice, soon enough in your life, something will be taken away from you, and you've been taking it for granted that whole time, and you won't know how to deal with it. You won't know how to deal with it because you've never had sacrifice in your life. And I'm talking about purposeful sacrifice and non-purposeful sacrifice, okay? It's a difficult one to get around, but it's so important to understand, because I do think you're doing a disservice to God and the world if you're not trying to become a better human being every single day. From the moment you open your eyes to the moment that you shut them, within your knowledge, everything that you know, you should be able to become at least a little bit better every single day, no matter what it is. If you are not, you are doing a disservice to you, your family, and most importantly, God, and of course, the world. So you better start acting. You better, because it's not difficult to start. It's not difficult to start, and soon enough, you keep on doing it enough, then you'll get better and better and better. It's simple. Okay, get on the flywheel, keep doing it, and you won't stop. All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that episode today. I think that's maybe a little bit harsh, but the world's harsh, and the best are okay with it. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll catch you in the next episode.